Back of here at halftime, Georgia and Georgia Tech. Georgia leading Georgia Tech 21-13. So we're back here at halftime to get your comments on what's going on and what has happened in the first half. I think it's pretty safe bet to say that this is not, the Georgia Tech team that Georgia has seen over the last 2 or 3 years. Very efficient on offense. Georgia Tech playing a good game on offense. Defensively, it seems like Georgia is not ticking as the way that you would hope that Georgia would be playing tonight. But Georgia is leading at halftime, 21-13. Do you think it's a surprise that Georgia is leading only by that much? Hey, John, how you doing, my man? What do you think about this first half? Give us your comments about the first half. The first half statistics: Carson Beck is 8 of 11 for 122 yards and one touchdown, no interceptions. Now, I can tell you offensively, Georgia can score at will. This Georgia Tech defense is not going to stop the University of Georgia. And it appears as if, minus the fumble by Dejon Edwards in the beginning of the football game, Georgia Tech's defense just really cannot stop Georgia's offense. And Georgia will be getting the ball at the beginning of the second half. Again, Carson Beck in the first half, 8 of 11, 122 yards, and one touchdown. Kendall Milton looks pretty strong, running really strong in the first half, 10 carries for 86 yards and a touchdown. Dejon Edwards, 5 rushes for 22 yards and a touchdown. Dominic Lovett, 3 receptions for 48 yards. Dejon Edwards, 2 receptions, 31 yards. Dylan Bell, 2 receptions, 27 yards. Georgia did have one turnover, a fumble. Dejon Edwards with the fumbles. Smile Munden with 4 tackles, 6 total in the first half. Warren Brinson had 5 tackles, 1 solo. C.J. Allen, 4 tackles and 2 solo. On the other side, Haynes King playing very good for Georgia Tech, 7 of 10 for 82 yards, no touchdowns. Jamal Haynes, 10 rushes, 39 yards. Dante Smith, strong, undersized running back. Kind of reminds you a little bit of that Schrader kid from Missouri. Of course, Schrader, you would say has more talent, but Dante Smith's a tough runner for his size. 7 rushes for 38 yards. Haynes King, quarterback, 7 rushes for 31 yards and a touchdown. And so at halftime now, you have Georgia 21 and Georgia Tech 13. John says our defense needs to tighten up. Hey, April, how you doing? Georgia needs to score when they come out. I think Georgia can score, at will. The Georgia Tech defense against the rush, against the pass, is not a very good defense. But 21-13, you would hope and expect. And here we go again, Georgia Tech scoring first. And, I guess it's a thing for Georgia to give up that initial touchdown to the opposing team. But 21-13, Georgia obviously is the better team, more talented team, obviously. But Georgia Tech is playing pretty tough and playing with enthusiasm. And they have some good quality players, but defensively, Georgia Tech just cannot stop Georgia. And just absolutely cannot stop Georgia. So Georgia leading 21-13 at halftime. Now, just checking some of the scores around the nation. Florida State now leading Florida in the third quarter, 14-12. Florida jumped out to a 12-0 lead, but Florida State has come back to take the lead in that game, 14-12. And Clemson beating South Carolina. And by the way, Clemson 13, South Carolina 7. How about that report that has come out on several news sources? Texas A&M is turning Dabo Swinney to be the next head coach at Texas A&M. That's a report. Several sources are reporting that Dabo Swinney now is really the target for Texas A&M. Now, I don't know if that's true, but there's several sources are reporting that. That'd be kind of interesting. Would Swinney, would he be tempted to leave Clemson to go to Texas A&M and coach in the SEC? Kind of interesting. And with Texas A, and they're going to have to pay Dabo Swinney, a pretty good contract after paying $77 million to Jimbo Fisher to go away. Would Texas A&M be willing to put up another big contract commitment to Swinney, which it would take for Dabo to leave Clemson to go to Texas A&M? Now, albeit Texas A&M has a lot of resources. The Texas A&M has available to it a lot of boosters that are just super rich, and it's one of the richest programs in the country outside of the program itself, from boosters and donors and that kind of thing. But that is kind of interesting. Of course, the big game today: Michigan beat Ohio State 30-24. Washington sneaking past Washington State 24-21. So next Friday night, you have in that Pac-12 championship game, you have Washington and Oregon, number 5 and number 7, I believe. Oregon's number 7 or 6 or something like that. So that'll be interesting. And I still can't get over the Alabama Auburn game. I mean, just absolutely unbelievable how Alabama won that football game. And I saw a tweet come out from David Pollock, of course, University of Georgia football great. He said his son asked him, "It must be really hard to be an Auburn fan." And apparently it is. It's pretty tough. But man, what a comeback and what a come from behind win for Alabama in that game. And of course, that sets up the big game next week with the University of Georgia and Alabama playing in the SEC championship game. Kentucky out of the SEC to knocking off number 10 Louisville today out of the ACC 38-31. So that sets up Louisville and Florida State in the ACC championship game. So that'll be a kind of an interesting game. Utah taking out Colorado today. Oklahoma State winning over BYU in like 2 overtimes, something like that. And that was a pretty good game. So some interesting scores from around the country. So what do you think about this game? Georgia, I don't know if Georgia came out flat or not. I didn't detect that Georgia came out flat. I do think Georgia Tech came out ready to roll and ready to go. And Georgia Tech and Georgia Tech's got a decent offense. This is not your average Georgia Tech team. Georgia Tech's won 6 games. They're bowl eligible. They've won 4 out of their last 5 games. So they're playing pretty good, but they can't match Georgia, and the Georgia Tech defense just can't stop Georgia. The only way that the Georgia offense can be stopped if Georgia stops itself. And of course, that happened with the fumble by Dejon Edwards on the first possession for the University of Georgia. So what do you think about the halftime? John says, my best friend is a Michigan fan and was there. Great game for Michigan. It was a good game for Michigan. And I was kind of ambivalent. Who did I want to win that game? I'm always thinking about who do I want to win a game or lose? Who do I want to lose a game? Who do I want to win or lose based on how it will affect Georgia? And so I was thinking, okay, Michigan, Ohio State, which one losing would help Georgia the most? And it was kind of a toss up, but big win for Michigan. Now 3 victories, 3 wins in a row over Ohio State. And Ryan Day, I don't think Ryan Day's in trouble at Ohio State, but that's kind of a sore spot with the Ohio State, fans about Ohio State, the Buckeyes losing 3 in a row to Michigan. Kind of interesting. Brandon makes the point. We have to get our run defense better because Alabama will use Milroe all game long next week, and that's true to run the ball. Listen, Alabama's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, and Alabama had a tough game against Auburn. Auburn reared its back up against Georgia, played Georgia very tough at home. Auburn did the same thing today with Alabama, reared itself up and played, very, very played a very tough game against Alabama at home. Um, so it's the SEC championship game. I mean, you have the clash of the Titans, Georgia and Alabama. Now Georgia needs to take care of business tonight and secure the undefeated season. 3 undefeated regular seasons in a row, which is fantastic. Georgia has won 38 regular seasons in a row, regular season games in a row, 28 games over, in a row since the loss that Georgia suffered 2 or 3 seasons ago. So it's a remarkable run for the University of Georgia. So Georgia needs to, win tonight. We anticipate Georgia pulling away from Georgia Tech in the second half. But then you got the clash of the Titans. And the question is, if Georgia, God forbid, if Georgia loses to Alabama, does Georgia still make it into the playoffs? I think they should. But a lot's going to depend on championships, Friday and Saturday. The Pac 12 championship game is next Friday, and the other championship games will be on Saturday. It's just really a toss up right now, and in a lot of ways. If Georgia can't stop Georgia Tech, how are they going to stop Milroe? That's true. I think Georgia Tech is really playing at a high level for them. You kind of wonder if they're going to be able to sustain that. Although offensively, the offensive game plan for Georgia Tech against Georgia tonight is really good, and it's working. You anticipate Georgia getting in control, in control of this game, and pulling away in the second half. At least that's you anticipate it, and that's certainly what you hope. Now, you guys, you might be watching Florida State into the third quarter. Is that what it is? Into the third quarter with Florida State leading Florida 14-12 at the moment. So we'll keep an eye on that. Go Gators! I can't believe I just said that, but go Gators! So here we are at halftime, 21-13, Georgia winning over Georgia Tech. And just again, Carson Beck, good first half, 8 of 11, 122 yards. Kendall Milton and Georgia can run through the Georgia Tech defense with no issue, with no problem. And so let's see. Let's hopefully Georgia will be able to pull away in the second half and put this thing, to bed pretty quick. We hope. Deborah Kay said I was pulling for Auburn. They let me down, and now Georgia. Go Dogs, go FSU. Okay. Yeah, I was, pulling for Auburn as well. Hey, John, how you doing? Oh, you're in Connecticut. Well, how's Connecticut tonight? I wonder how, I wonder what the weather is like in Connecticut. Yeah, when you're from the deep South like I am, and you talk about Connecticut and New York and Michigan, you always think there's snow on the ground everywhere up north. John says it's cold. Okay. Yeah, when you're from that country like I am, south of Macon, when you talk about the north, and anything for us down here, anything north of Tennessee is north. You always think, man, it's snowing up there. It's knee deep. Glenn says Georgia's defense is not good enough to win a championship. Defense is pathetic, and Alabama's going to win. Oh, okay, Glenn, that's your take on it, huh? Well, hopefully Georgia's defense will, will tighten up here, and Georgia defense has been very good. In fact, statistically, nationally, Georgia's defense is right up there in all the categories of leading in the categories. I think Georgia's defense does have what it takes to win another national championship. I think the offense does as well. Now, Georgia's defense, I don't think you could categorize it as being as good as it has been for the last 2 years. But, there you go. Any thoughts on why we don't bel I was wondering the same thing, to be honest with you. I wanna see more pressure on Georgia Tech's quarterback, on King. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I have a sneaking suspicion we may see more of that in the second half, put more pressure on him. And, yeah, I think, Kirby Smart likes to talk about Glenn Schumann having the notebook of adjustments. And, I'm sure there's gonna be adjustments made. But I was thinking the same thing, Brendan. We need to put pressure on the quarterback a little bit better. But let's see. We'll see what happens. All right, guys, we're going to step out of here. We're going to watch the second half with you. We'll be back at the end of the game, hopefully, to celebrate a Georgia victory. Give you the opportunity to give us your final thoughts for Georgia beating Georgia Tech tonight. Hopefully, that will be the outcome. And so we'll be back with you and at the end of the game. And so always, as we close everything we do, go dog.